Hello and welcome to Joy-Con Cast episode 5. I'm your host, Nicholas, and this week we're talking Nintendo taking on VR, Nintendo's toning down on monetization, a potential new Octopath Traveler game, and more. Welcome to this week's episode of the Joy-Con Cast. We have quite a bit to talk about this week, and kicking things right off, what they were actually going to be talking about is Nintendo's take on VR. So, ever since the Switch was announced, and pretty much ever since its launch, a lot of people, myself included, have been interested in the possibility of Nintendo doing VR. The Switch, hardware-wise, would be great for VR. Simply strapping it into a headset, sliding it into a headset in front of you. While, yeah, maybe the screen isn't that great, the hardware isn't that powerful, and what games would actually look, play, and run on Switch VR, yeah, those are mysteries, those are questions we've had, but all in all, the idea of Nintendo doing VR has been interesting since VR itself, I think, became a thing. And while personally, I think VR is not necessarily a gimmick, it's more of a fad that, honestly, it's just not there yet in terms of pricing, in terms of the hardware, in terms of the games. But Nintendo is taking their own approach with VR, and they're actually bundling it. Well, not necessarily bundling it, but they're doing it under the Nintendo Labo name. So we're actually going to get Nintendo Labo Toy-Con 4, and it's going to be a VR kit. Now, from what it looks like, there's actually going to be 3 different sets. Or no, there's 2 different sets. One of them is the VR kit. One of them is a starter set plus blaster, and then it looks like that also has different expansions. So these are due April 12th. And let me run through the starter set plus the blaster. It comes with the Toy-Con VR goggles, as well as a Toy-Con blaster. So it looks like you can play basically kind of like different shooter type games, stuff like that. And then the expansion set 1 is a camera plus an elephant. So you get Toy-Con camera and Toy-Con elephant. The Toy-Con elephant actually looks kind of cool. The expansion set 2 is bird plus wind pedal. So you get a nice little Toy-Con bird and a nice little pedal as well. As far as the other set that you can get, the Nintendo Labo Toy-Con 4, the actual VR kit is basically everything. So you get everything included: the VR goggles, the wind pedal, camera, the elephant, the bird, and the blaster. So if you actually get the entire VR kit, that basically comes with everything, while the starter kit basically just comes with the blaster and the the goggles. But you can also buy the different expansions at a later time, which is kind of an interesting way of doing it. But that's how it's done, I guess. As far as pricing goes, the VR kit, so the actual everything, the actual, the elephant, the wind, the pedal, all that, does retail at $79.99, so a whopping $80 for the VR kit. So I'd imagine that the starter set plus the blaster would be half the price of that. And then, of course, the other expansions would probably be like $20 or so each, so that eventually the entire thing would be $80 either way, I'd imagine. I don't know why they're doing it like this, but you can get starter set, or you can get the entire bundle, everything included. And I think this is an interesting way of doing it. And ever since Nintendo released Labo, I didn't buy into it. I didn't buy it. I wasn't that interested in it. It wasn't marketed towards me per se, but it is pretty cool. And even back when this was first announced, I talked about it, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting. I mean, obviously this isn't just regular old cardboard. This is like it's cardboard that's created with the intent of playing games on it and creating something, and I think it's really cool. And some of the things that you can create, even with the VR kit, like the blaster, it looks, I don't know, not necessarily challenging or hard, but it looks fun to put together. It looks like, it's not just something that you can come up with maybe outside of Labo or outside of having instructions. And without Labo, we probably wouldn't have seen some of these creations with cardboard, as well as see these creations integrated with the video games. And ever since Labo was announced, I kind of figured that anything Nintendo would do regarding like VR or anything like that would probably be included with Nintendo Labo. Obviously, I don't think Nintendo would ever, at least not now, make a headset or make it an actual proper VR headset. I don't think the Switch needs that. And honestly, VR headsets, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily that they're gimmicky. It's that the starting price, even to get into them, is expensive. Even with like PlayStation VR, it's expensive. The pricing is just, it's too expensive to get into. The hardware's too bulky. There's wires everywhere, cables everywhere. The games are far and few between, and some of the games that are available on VR, like, I know Fallout 4 is on VR, Doom, Skyrim, those are still like $60 games, even on VR, and a majority of people have already played those on launch, and I don't know if VR is worth rebuying them for just to play them in this new light. And there, I believe I've played the HTC Vive a couple times, and it's fun. Like, it's fun for half an hour, or in small bursts, small sessions. It's fun. There's some interesting co-op games on there, but to make a VR a way to play alongside PC gaming and console gaming, I mean, you're paying darn near console price for some of these headsets. And I think because of that, I don't know, it's just VR as a whole, until it becomes as easy as just a pair of goggles that you strap on, that you put onto your head, and maybe like a wire or two from that going into your PC, and until it works across the board with most hardware, not just super powerful PCs, like until that happens, it's just not worth it. It's just, there are better alternatives, I think, to playing games. But it's interesting to see Nintendo tackle VR, and it kind of makes sense that they're doing it with Labo. Like I said, I don't think Nintendo has much faith or interest in doing proper VR, due to performance, due to just the gimmick of it, due to, like I said, what games would you really play on Switch? And plus, having Switch VR, like, yeah, it'd be cool, but I guess, yeah, it'd actually be kind of cool. I guess it would actually be kind of cool to have another way to play Switch. Because you already have, like, tabletop, you have handheld, you have docked or console play. It would be kind of cool to have a proper VR way to play Switch, but I don't know. I think it's interesting, but it's nothing that I'm excited for. It's nothing that I'm going to buy. But it'd be cool to check out when it actually launches in April 12th. I do believe, let me double check. Yes, April 12th. But with that said, that is Nintendo Labo VR. Moving on to some more Nintendo news, and this one's kind of quick. I just thought this was interesting. So about a week ago now, Nintendo actually tweeted and then quickly deleted a tweet regarding Pokemon Sword and Shield, and the tweets basically said, "It appears in Pokemon Sword and Shield that gyms in the Galar region are now bigger than ever. What types of gym masters are waiting for you to challenge them? You and your new partner Pokemon will have to train hard and find out. And it did include a picture of 2 screenshots or 2 screens that we saw from the initial direct for the Pokemon games. One of them is the actual gym. It's the person like running towards the gym, and it looks like there's a grass icon above the door, so it looks like that's the grass gym leader. The other picture is that screen that we saw at the very end of the, or not the end of the direct, but towards the end of the direct, of this character walking into this big stadium. He's got like a jersey on, stuff like that. So this says a lot of things, and it's now deleted. And I haven't seen them retweet anything similar to this, but it basically kind of confirms a few things. First of all, gym masters are a thing. They're not gym leaders, but obviously gyms are a thing. Like, and I guess yeah, like we did have in some gen we didn't have gyms, but I think it was kind of confirmed this time around that we were gonna have gyms. But to say gym masters, I don't know if it's I don't know. I think we're looking too much into it, to be honest, but it is interesting. And with these Pokemon games just being announced and us having to wait for more information, it's kind of exciting having Pokemon news like this, having even deleted tweets, like having stuff to look at and examine and analyze. It's kind of fun, and this is why this is something I kind of miss with the Let's Go games and even Sun and Moon. Like, I miss this kind of stuff. So either way though, like gym masters, definitely not gym leaders. I don't know if that's someone mistyping it. I don't know if that's something that's going to be in the game. I don't know if Nintendo's PR team or whoever runs their Twitter, they probably don't know as much about the game as Game Freak does. So maybe there's some mistranslation there, information getting out that's not confirmed, or anyway. But gym masters are a thing. We also now can kind of confirm that that character walking into that stadium is walking into a huge gym, kind of a stadium, not a gym, not necessarily a gym anymore. It's like a stadium. It's like a sports event kind of thing, and it looks like there's bleachers all around. There's people watching. There's lights shining down on you. So it'll be interesting to see what gyms end up doing this time around. I do feel maybe to some extent like it's another way to restructure gyms. And so it's not the same old bland formula that we've had, kind of like what 7th Gen did. Maybe they're redoing the way gym battles, or the way you battle gym masters. It's interesting. Of course, like I said, deleted tweet, so there's really nothing more to say about it. But I just thought it was interesting, and like I said, around this time, it's just exciting getting Pokemon news and trying to figure out what's, what new Pokemon there are, what more information can we find out, what's getting leaked, stuff like that. It's just exciting and it's fun. I don't know. Let me know what you guys make out of this. Do you think it was just somebody maybe mistranslating information? Do you think there's just something got mistyped? Or do you think there's actual genuine information here that got posted way before it was supposed to be announced? Let me know what you think. But for now, we're going to move on. And this is kind of some interesting positive news. Nintendo is toning down monetization for Dragalia Lost, which is a mobile game developed by Cyber Agent. But Nintendo is ordering them to tone down monetization. They don't want to be seen as greedy, and they don't want players spending as much money. This is something you do not see at all in the gaming industry, especially when it comes to mobile games and gacha games and stuff like that, where the game feels like it's designed and developed around monetization and loot boxes and in-game purchases and stuff like that. It's it's a free to play game, um, but it definitely has a lot of monetization to it, as a lot of free to play games do now. Um, but this is just crazy. You do not see this. You do not hear stuff like this. If anything, you constantly hear about how companies, they don't care if they're seen as greedy. They don't care if they're seen as, whatever. They want money. They want monetization. But in this case, Nintendo doesn't want to be seen as a greedy company. They don't want to be criticized for too much monetization in their games. And it's kind of a, it's interesting. It's really, you don't see this. You just don't see this at all. And it's kind of, it really goes to show how important Nintendo views themselves and how they care how they're perceived. Not only do they want to give players great experiences and those wow moments and those, great gaming experiences, but they want to do so proudly, and they want to do so without feeling like people think they're greedy or people think this or that. Nintendo, it's kind of like the Metroid Prime thing, where Metroid Prime 4 got delayed heavily. It got delayed. It got scratched, basically. It's restarted. You don't see stuff like that. You just don't. Other developers, other studios, they would say, so what? Keep going. Like, we have a deadline to make. We're going to make it. We can fix the game later. You don't see companies starting a game from scratch and completely restarting development, or completely handing stuff over to a new company. Like, you just don't see stuff like that. And it's something that even right now, with like the spotlight that Nintendo's in because of the success of the Switch, they're not letting their beliefs get in the way of that. Metroid Prime, there's a lot of people who bought a Switch for Metroid Prime. And I'm sure it pains and hurts Nintendo to restart development like that, but they're not going to let greed or publicity get in the way of doing what's right. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, they're not letting their success or business, I don't know what I'm exactly trying to say. I don't know how I'm trying to say it, but it's something that other companies worry about because they don't want to be seen as, they just want to make money. It's basically the end all of it. It's they want to make money. They don't want to lose money. They want to make money. And of course, Nintendo wants to make money. It's a company. It needs to thrive, and it needs to make money to thrive. But to want to come out and say we don't want to be greedy, we don't want to be like the rest of them, and to say that they don't want to make a large amount of revenue from this game, it's shocking, and it's something you do not see. It's really interesting. Reading an article here, I'm reading from Kotaku right now. They actually did say, an official at CyberAgent told the journal, if we managed the game alone, we would have made a lot more in terms of money. Nintendo is not interested in making a large amount of revenue from a single smartphone game. So basically what they're saying is that Nintendo, instead of just making a ton of money from Dragalia Lost, they'd rather release Dragalia Lost, Fire Emblem Heroes, Super Mario Run, I forgot what was it Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, and of course they have like the Dr. Mario mobile game, they have the Mario Kart mobile game, those are coming. Instead of just profiting off of a single smartphone game, they'd rather provide a handful of experiences for everybody and market a little bit of those games, or have a little bit of monetization in those games. Which I guess makes sense. Like, I don't know. I don't know how is it worth, Because I'd imagine a game like Dragalia Lost, which I've played a little bit of it, I've played a little bit of it. I'm not too big into mobile games. Pokemon Go is the only mobile game I actively play, but I've played a little bit of it. And it is kind of like one of those gacha games where you grind for characters, you grind for heroes, and some of them are rare, some of them are hard to get, and there is some monetization involved, in-app purchases, not required, but recommended. There are a lot of people who play games like that who are going to spend tons of money in those games. And I don't know what's better, heavily profiting a game like Dragalia Lost, where there's a very niche crowd for it that will spend a lot of money, or providing a ton of different games for many different casual mobile game players, lightly monetizing each game, and then profiting off of all those people. I don't know which is better, but Nintendo obviously thinks the latter because it seems less greedy. And like I said, you don't read about stuff like this, so it's really interesting. It's an interesting read. It's interesting to look into. It's interesting to think about. We still do have the Mario Kart mobile game coming out. And earlier this year, Nintendo actually announced Dr. Mario World, which is supposed to get a summer release. Regarding Dr. Mario World, Mario Kart was announced like a year ago. I don't know if that's also getting a summer release at this point. I've not heard anything about that in a long time. But I'd imagine both games are going to be free to play, and it will have in-app purchases alongside of them. But yeah, Dragalia Lost is toning down on monetization. So if you play that game, good news. As far as the devs, I'm sure, like they said, they would make so much more money without Nintendo. I don't know what they're thinking right now. I don't know if they're necessarily losing money with this, but it's a miracle to see in the gaming industry. And of course, it would be Nintendo to go in on monetization and say, you know what? Let's make the game fair. Let's make it balanced. Let's discourage too much monetization. You do not see that at all in the current state of the gaming industry, especially with these mobile gacha games. And it is so refreshing, and it's so blissful to hear. And this goes to show that Nintendo really, in the long run, they do care about their lifelong fans. They do care about creating experiences that last more than just its initial launch period. It's kind of the reason why games like Breath of the Wild, for example, or Super Mario Odyssey, like, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but that's what I do. But like, those are games that even in 2019 and even moving forward, even at the end of the Switch's life cycle, Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild will still be games that you buy with your Nintendo Switch, or you buy a Switch for, and they'll most likely still be $59.99. If not, they'll probably be like those Nintendo Selects where they're slightly cheaper, but they're still a premium quality game. And that's what Nintendo does. They don't make, a lot of other developers, whether it's in-house studios for Sony and creating PlayStation exclusives, or they're just third-party games, like a lot of developers, they make a game, they release it for $60, they market it, they profit off of it, and then after a few months, it goes on sale, and at initial launch, they try to capitalize on everybody and get everybody in here. After a few months, they, maybe tone down the pricing a little bit to get more people in, but then after that, it's like the game loses motivation, it loses power, because the company's already at work at the next game in that franchise. And that's why if you go to Amazon, I think Horizon Zero Dawn, if not the definitive edition or the deluxe edition or the Game of the Year edition, whatever it is, if not that, then at least the standard edition is like $20 on Amazon, whereas Breath of the Wild is still $60. And those came out at the same time. I think Horizon came out maybe a week before Breath of the Wild back in 2017. And Breath of the Wild is still sitting at $60, and there's a reason for that. They care about the lifelong fans. They care about creating infinite experiences that they don't want to profit right away off of as many people as they can. They want to create an experience that is for a lifetime and that people can get into at any point in time. They want to create a game that's $60 at launch just as much as it's $60 3 years from now. And while, yeah, you can sit here and criticize that. You can sit here and say that's not right, or, $60 a year or two after launch isn't fair, whatever. But you have to admit that Nintendo has a very strong hold on their IPs, their franchises, and they know how to make great experiences with those franchises. And they don't want to be seen as greedy. They don't want to be seen as making a quick buck or releasing a game, profiting off the first couple months and then moving on. They want to make a genuinely great experience for everybody that lasts as much as an infinite amount of time as it can. That's why Nintendo can resell the NES Classic or SNES Classic or have the NES app on the Switch. Because even like NES games, while yes, a lot of us have played them tons of times before, they are infinite experiences. There are games like the original Zelda, or the original Mario Bros, or Super Mario Bros. 3, or early Metroid games, Super Metroid for example, that are still just as good now as they were when they were released. And Nintendo wants to do that with mobile games. They want to provide a ton of different IPs as mobile games like Mario, Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem, Mario Kart, so on and so forth, and have as many people enjoy the games as possible without just seen as being greedy or making profit. And that's the difference between Nintendo and other companies. And I think it's impressive that Nintendo is a huge company. And, even if the Switch had failed, Nintendo would have gone right back up and released another hardware because Nintendo has that money. They have that loyal fan base. They have that confidence. And so they are a huge company. And you rarely see companies like that willingly tone down a monetization and tone down the amount of money that their players can spend in their game. And I think it's kind of a miracle. You really don't see that. And it's impressive, and this is why I choose a lot of the time to play on Nintendo hardware and to play Nintendo games, because they have that sense of dignity that other companies and other studios don't seem to have. And it's not only impressive, it's not only a miracle, it's kind of beautiful to see, especially in the current state of the gaming industry. But moving on from Nintendo, toning down on the monetization, which again is unbelievable. But moving on, we're actually taking a look at Dead Cells because new free DLC, it's on its way. This month, there will be new skins, new levels, and new bosses in this upcoming Dead Cells DLC. So as of right now, it's confirmed for both PC and console. From what I've read, it's coming to PC first, and it's coming on March 28th. So at the end of this month, there will be free Dead Cells DLC. However, it looks like consoles may get it at a later point. On Twitter, the devs did say that they were trying to limit the time between the DLC launching on PC and console. So there's no exact word on when it's coming to console, as far as I know. But Rise of the Giant, I'm actually reading this from PC Gamer here. Rise of the Giant will let you continue your fight in a new location, the Cavern, which you'll only gain access to once you beat the game. So basically, I'm never going to be able to play the DLC. I don't know about you guys, but continue on. Inside, you'll find new enemies, another boss, and probably more deaths than you could possibly keep track of in your head. So yeah, there's more challenges coming with this DLC. However, you do need to beat the main game in order to play through this. I've been playing a lot of Dead Cells, but I don't think I'll ever beat the game. and not for a lack of trying. The game can get pretty rough. It can get pretty hard. I like it. I love Dead Cells. It's easily one of my favorite Switch games. I loved it on PC. I love it on Switch. But I don't know if I'll. I mean, I want to beat the game. I want to play this DLC, but it's just it's just tough. And it looks like from what I'm reading through the DLC, it looks like it's kind of even harder, or just as hard, if not harder, than the main game itself. But either way, it is a free update. It's a free DLC. So I hope we continue to see stuff like this hit Dead Cells, because Dead Cells is one of those games that could really profit from these free updates and these quality of life updates that bring more value to the game at no price. So this is great news. Like I said, March 28th, no word on consoles. Good news all around. I hope it gets more. Because, like I said, I think this is a game that could really benefit from getting free DLC and getting free content added to the game. But now I really need to start working on my games. So I know what I'm doing after this week's show. I'm playing some more Dead Cells because I do want to try out that DLC. But moving on, we actually have some interesting news regarding Octopath Traveler. There's potentially not one, but 2 new Octopath Traveler games coming to a smartphone or a Nintendo Switch near you. So earlier this month, we actually got the announcement that Octopath Traveler was going to get a prequel on mobile devices, so on iOS and Android. It's going to be a free-to-play single-player RPG, and it's going to work like a prequel to Octopath Traveler on Nintendo Switch. And I haven't played this game. Man, do I want to. I'm working on the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 right now. I'm replaying Breath of the Wild right now. I'm playing Dead Cells right now. And I don't know. I wanted to start up Tales of Vesperia, I think it is. I wanted to start that up. I want to play Dragon Quest when that comes out later this year. There's just so many RPGs and big games like that I'm playing that I don't know if I can fit in Octopath Traveler in my playtime at all. But I think when it goes on sale next, I'll probably scoop it up. I'll probably pick it up. And even if I don't play it right away, at least I'll have it. Because, man, I do want to play this game. I love the art style of it. It looks like it's a big, fast RPG with tons to do and tons of lore and characters. And I love games like that. I just rarely get time to play them because they're so big. But it looks like it's getting a prequel as a mobile game, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, there's that. If you're not into mobile games, though, there might be an Octopath Traveler sequel hitting Nintendo Switch. So I'm reading this off of GameRant. In a recent interview by Famitsu, head of Square Enix's 11th business division, Tomoya Asana, he mentions the possibility of a sequel to Octopath Traveler or even another installment in the Bravely Default series. So I didn't play the first Bravely Default. I watched a good chunk of gameplay and it looked kind of fun. It looked kind of like it looked up my alley. It's something I've wanted to play, but I haven't played it. But the idea of another Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler game coming to Switch is good. I mean, whether we get a Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler, either or, I think it's cool to see that these series find so much life on Switch. And I know this game did really well in Japan and even here in the Americas. I know a lot of people who are talking about it and playing it. And it's really cool to see that a console like the Switch can get these big RPG games and get so much love for it, and that they're so successful on the Switch. And yeah, like, I don't really think Xbox, I don't know, I don't associate RPG games with the Xbox at all, but I do. I mean, PS4 does have Persona 5, which I know is a big RPG type game, but yeah, I mean, Nintendo Switch, it gives these games life, and so it's really cool to even hear the possibility of Octopath Traveler getting a sequel. Um, so hopefully this happens. I want to play the first Octopath Traveler definitely. As far as Bravely Default coming to Nintendo Switch, um, I would hope that we get maybe, I don't know if they port over the first one, but I definitely want to play like the first Bravely Default, or even just play a Bravely Default game on Switch. I want games like that on Switch. I know both games have seen a fair share of success, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited that even the possibility of these games getting sequels is there. It's exciting. It's cool. I'm happy. I love it. So let me know what you guys thought on, if you played Octopath Traveler, let me know what you think. And let me know what you think on a potential sequel. Because like I said, I didn't play Octopath Traveler yet. So for me, I don't know what a sequel would be like. But it'd be really, really cool. So yeah, a prequel is confirmed though as a mobile game. A potential sequel is on its way. And last up, for this week's episode, I want to talk about a little thing called PS4 Remote Play. And I know this is a Nintendo Switch focused podcast, but I wanted to mention it because it's really, really interesting. And I think it's showing exactly where gaming is going in terms of being able to play your games on any device, anywhere. So Sony actually released PS4 Remote Play, which is a way for you to basically play your PS4 games on your smartphone. You can connect your smartphone to your PS4, enable Remote Play. You can download an application, you sign into your PlayStation, and from there you can actually use your phone as a controller with the PS4 screen on the phone. You can actually use it to control your game. And I've seen this in both landscape mode and portrait. So, obviously when it's in landscape, you kind of have your controls. You kind of have like a little interface over the gameplay. Whereas with its portrait, like half of it's the gameplay screen, half of it's controls. And I'd imagine I think you're also able to actually connect a PS4 controller to your phone and use it as a Bluetooth device to control the game itself, so you don't have to use touch controls. But this is interesting. You look at the Switch, and this is kind of something it just does natively. You dock the Switch, it's on your TV, you pull the Switch out of the dock, and you can take it with you anywhere. You can play it anywhere. And obviously there's more versatility. You get more third-party and first-party games that are running actually on the system. You can play it in different ways, handheld, tabletop. You can play it as a console. You can detach the Joy-Con. There's more to it. But to see PS4 get Remote Play, I think is kind of Sony, at the bare minimum, realizing that there is kind of a demand for being able to play your games anywhere. And as this is Remote Play, it's obviously it's not like I said, it's not natively running on a smartphone. It's not natively running on your iPhone, so it's still connected to the PS4 in some way. But it does show that Sony, is kind of opening up their mind to the idea of playing your games anywhere you want and on any device. This was previously exclusive to PS Vita and their own Sony's own smartphones, but now it's opened up to iPhones. However, if you're using an Android phone, unless it's, I don't know how you pronounce it, is it Xperia? Unless you're using a Sony Xperia phone, it's still not available. But there is a workaround. As people find, there is a way to do it on non-Sony branded Android phones, so good news. But it does show that Sony's at least opening their minds a little bit to the idea of being able to play your games anywhere and on any device you want. And this is something that obviously Xbox and Microsoft, they're kind of creating a brand with Xbox with Project xCloud. The idea of playing Halo or Forza or even third-party games, possibly like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Doom Eternal, playing these games on any device you want through streaming is going to be a reality, and that's what Microsoft sees the future as. Even Nintendo. I mean, you look at the Nintendo Switch, and they see a market in a hybrid console, and I do think that, yeah, Sony and Microsoft are getting their foot in the door with this idea of bringing their games to as many systems as possible with some restrictions. Obviously, we're not going to see Uncharted on an Xbox or on a Switch, but bringing it possibly to phones and tablets through streaming or remote play, that's kind of the future that we're going to see. And this might actually be a topic for a whole another episode of the cast here. But I have kind of wanted to talk about the idea of, I guess, now with Sony's remote play, while it's not going to be as good as an actual hybrid console or a dedicated streaming service like Microsoft's bringing to the table, but will cloud streaming hurt the Switch? You know, will being able to play third-party games on your smartphone hurt bringing your Switch with you anywhere? Obviously, like I said earlier, like, you want to play, I'll just use Rocket League as an example here. I was playing it earlier, so let's use that as an example. If you want to play Rocket League on your Switch, you know, you're playing it natively on your Nintendo Switch. You've got nice controls on the side, not touchscreen controls. You can always detach the Joy-Con and put them back onto the Switch, and it's a nicer, more well thought out experience, and that's better for playing your games on the go. Whereas something like streaming Rocket League on your phone, you know, there's going to be lag, there's going to be latency, you're going to need a really good internet connection. Touchscreen controls are nowhere near as good as actual controls, and even if you buy a dedicated controller for your phone, that's one other thing that you're going to have to carry around, whereas the Joy-Con are integrated in a part of the actual Switch system. You know, obviously there's a lot more pros to buying a Switch than there are pros to streaming your games on your phone or tablet, but the idea of basically playing your games on any system you want with Microsoft's xCloud, it does kind of make you think about the future and the future success of the Nintendo Switch. And obviously, like, there's still a lot of merit to the hybrid console. Like, there's still a lot of, you know, you still got those first-party exclusives. You still have games like Smash and Pokemon that are only available on Switch. And I do think a lot more people, especially right now, the internet is just, it's not up to par. It's not good enough to warrant a streaming future. As far as gaming goes, like, I'm a pro digital person. I download all of my games these days. Yeah, there's little ownership, I guess, when you think of actually going out to GameStop and buying a game. You own that physical game. You don't really own digital games, but streaming offers even less ownership. There's going to be lag and latency. The games will only look as good as your internet connection allows. There's just a lot of cons right now when it comes to this idea of remote play or streaming your games. And Nintendo kind of checks everything off that list and says, yep, we have a counter for that. Yep, we have a resolution for that. Yep, we can fix that. And they just made a native hybrid console. And I think in the long run, it's going to be much better suited for console games on the go than what Microsoft could offer with their streaming service, at least as of right now. Like I said, until 5G is a thing, until it's the norm, until it's widespread, until internet is more accessible, affordable, it's just this idea of xCloud, of being able to play any game on any platform, anywhere, it's not a reality. And I think until then, Nintendo has some time to think about their next move, and how they want to handle that, I guess, because it's kind of competing with the Switch in a way. And personally, I'd rather, as far as playing games on the go, like if we're talking about third party, indie games or AAA games or anything like that, yeah, I'd rather bring my Switch with me and play games like Fortnite or Rocket League or Doom than bring my smartphone and have to rely on an internet connection and a separate controller and this or that. Like, Switch has everything just built into it, and it's more well-rounded for that experience. So, I don't know. It's interesting to see where hybrid gaming and where gaming as a whole is going as companies start to focus more on bringing their games to other platforms and allow people to play their games anywhere. And obviously, PS4 remote play, it's not going to be the next big killer thing. It's not going to be, it's cool, but like, I've been doing it on my Switch for years now, and it's a much better experience, in my opinion. But it is interesting to see Sony opening up remote play to more than just their own systems. And while especially for a company that has such a restriction on their players, their games, their online services, look at the way they handled crossplay and stuff like that. Like, it is interesting to see them open up the gates a little bit and allow their games, even on an iPhone, in some regard. So I do think that shows that even Sony sees the future being a little less restrictive and more open to other platforms. And I'm sure if we ever saw Sony completely allow remote play on other tablets and phones and laptops and stuff like that, there would be heavy restrictions. Because I do think, especially now, while I don't think they're doing, well, I was going to say, I think now they put a lot of faith and trust into their first party exclusive titles. They're as much as Nintendo now, but they don't have as much of a strong hold on those properties as Nintendo does. I mean, you look at characters like Crash, and how there's a lot of characters and franchises like that have they've lost ownership to. But I think now they are going to have some more restrictions on how their experiences are experienced on other platforms. It's I don't think we'll ever see Nintendo allow Mario on any other platform other than a Nintendo console. And while Microsoft may be open to it and Sony's experimenting with it, Nintendo kind of found their own way to handle hybrid gaming and handle playing your games anywhere on the go. And I think as of right now, until internet is more affordable, accountable, accessible, it's more widespread, especially 5G, LTE, and all that. Like, until that happens, I don't think anything is necessarily going to compete with what the Switch offers. But it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's an interesting topic, because we are getting more and more companies like Sony and Microsoft experimenting with the idea of bringing their games to multiple platforms. Whether it be streaming or, like earlier, Microsoft announced Halo the Master Chief Collection is just straight up coming to PC. More companies are being more open to bringing their games to other platforms. And instead of looking at Xbox as a hardware, they're looking at it as a brand and a potential service that they can monetize more by spreading it out across multiple platforms. So I don't think we'll ever see Nintendo doing that. I think for now, the Switch is their answer to what Microsoft and Sony haven't planned. But like I said, it's interesting to think about. But I think that's all the week there is. That's all the week there is. That's all the time there is this week. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, if you want to support the show on Patreon, you can find a link in the description down below. If you would like to follow us on Twitter for updates and more, of course, there's a link in the description down below. But once again, thank you for listening this week. It is greatly appreciated. And always, as always, have yourselves a good one.